Bruce, you must have something really good too.
Of course I do. It's Bruce Danielson, and I guess I'm here to entertain you too.
4 o'clock. Ready? All right. I have no gavel, but it is 4 o'clock. So we will begin our meeting, and I'd like to welcome all of you who are here with us today, board members and guests, and any who may be watching this at a later date on the tape. So we will begin, as always, with a roll call and determination of quorum.
Ray Lindquist?
Yes.
Jim Stavanger?
Yes.
Ann Noctigal? Mark Steinborn?
Yes.
Todd Sunley?
Yes.
Patty Abdallah?
Yes.
Mike Begeman?
Yes.
Okay.
Leo Trump?
Okay, thank you. I'm going to call on Mike a minute.
Yes, I would like to move that we would move the recognition pieces for Mark and Patty to the end of the agenda today.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. You need a vote on that? All right, we will vote.
Lindquist?
Yes.
Stavanger?
Yes.
Noctigal? Yes. Steinborn?
Yes.
Sunley?
Yes.
Abdallah?
Yes.
Begeman?
Yes.
Okay, and moving on to the approval of the minutes from the June 19th, 2019 meeting. Are there any corrections or additions to those minutes? If not, is there a motion to approve them?
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded, so roll call vote, please.
Lindquist?
Yes.
Stavanger?
Yes.
Noctigal? Steinborn?
Yes.
Sunley?
Yes.
Abdallah? Yes. Begeman?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Again, thank you for joining us today. At this point, we do invite public comment, but if you are here to speak to one of the agenda items, we ask that you would hold that those comments until that point in the agenda. So at this time, if you could just introduce yourselves, and then Rita, do you have a sign-in sheet too today or
I do
not?
but I have
Okay,
talked to
you know everyone?
who's
Okay,
here.
so she has names and spelling, so if you just could introduce yourselves?
Sorry, so we don't chat.
No, just introductions.
Oh, I'm sorry. We were just finalizing a little
That's
something.
all
here.
right.
So
Strategizing.
I'm
Yeah.
Walter Ports with the Sioux Falls Skate Park Association.
Thank you for being here, okay? Back row?
Zon Tran with Rich Greeno Memorial Committee.
Okay.
Harlan Wolf with the Rich Greeno Committee.
All right, okay, thank you. Report of the standing committees, the marketing and public needs.
We met most things here on the agenda. We also touched a little bit on the mayor's proposal to move more money over to the streets and looked at a little bit of private funding for the parks. We also discussed a little bit about what's going on at the Ash 4, and we also, I think that's what all we talked about. Oh, we also touched a little bit on the survey that was
Okay.
sent out.
Thank you. Excuse me. Park system planning and development. Items that are on the agenda are things that we discussed, also the items that Mark mentioned, and also the possibility of initiating a Roundup program. And partnerships and recreation.
Same as the two of you, along with, we talked a little bit about the Elmwood Clubhouse update.
All right.
That's it.
Thanks. All right. No unfinished business today, so we will move on to new business. The first item being the Nelson Park Master Plan. Mike.
Now I'll come on.
All right.
Tori's my tripod here. So. Thank you, everybody. So we talked about this in the committee meetings, of course. Today we have Walter Ports with us. He's with the Sioux Falls Skate Park Association. Just to give you a little backdrop, we've been working with them for a couple years now, trying to identify potential for building a skate plaza somewhere in the Sioux Falls community, preferably probably in the downtown area. We, for a couple years, checked out a lot of different sites, mostly in the downtown area, both public and private, and ultimately we came back to Nelson Park. And so as a part of that process and a potential partnership with them, we needed to do an update to the Nelson Park Master Plan. A series of different meetings were conducted. The Skate Park Association held multiple meetings, mostly with the skate park community, the various skaters that use these facilities, just to gather feedback on, what sort of elements they'd like, what sort of experiences they'd like to see created. We also conducted a public meeting about the master plan itself. We held that last month. It was pretty well attended. It was really positive, and a couple notes about, sort of what we learned from that meeting is, one, the plan was pretty well received. People like pedestrian connections and pathways in the park, as well as lighting, wanted everything integral as far as the different elements in the park, and really try to make, don't hide the skate park, but make it an active place within the park. So, the master plan we discussed in committee, it's really a spatial rearrangement of the items notified or identified in the existing 2008 master plan. One thing it does do is moves the skate plaza from down on the south end of the park up near the northeast corner, and it really takes it from a modular, different ramps experience to a more integrated approach to skating, and Walter will talk more about that when he comes up. It adds pathways for both a walking loop throughout the park as well as pedestrian connections from the surrounding context into the park. It allows for repurposing of the existing skate plaza into some other experience. That facility is in good shape for its age and could become basketball or pickleball or some other feature here in the near future. It also maintains the open space, which is a big part of the 2008 plan, and it keeps additional opportunities for recreational opportunities in the northwest corner. So that's sort of the highlights of the master plan itself. One thing in page 2 of the handout I gave you, we've furthered the master plan a little bit further to give you an idea of what would be included in sort of this first phase of the skate plaza piece of the project. And if you look at the second phase, you can kind of see the skate plaza area here is shown in red, green, and blue. Walter's going to talk about that. If you look at the smaller window, that shows what items would be a part of the plan as far as this first project. You could see the skate plaza is obviously the big piece of the puzzle. It also incorporates pedestrian walkways, the looping trail, additional parking as needed for the addition of the skate park, as well as landscaping and other elements to be included. Right now, sort of rough preliminary cost estimates, we're showing it about a $1.6 million project, which would be privately fundraised from the Sioux Falls Skate Park Association and become a gift to the city at some point in the future. The next steps, if the board approves the update to the master plan, Walter and his group will go forward in applying for a community appeals fundraising slot for the 2021-2022 fundraising timeframe. And with that, I'll turn it over to Walter to talk more about the details of the skate plaza.
So just to give you guys a little bit of background first, about 2 years ago, a couple of different factors came into play, and for a long time, skateboarders have complained about skate parks, and just like anybody does, like we want better facilities, and a couple of us that obviously are older now and not even skateboarding anymore said, you know what, somebody needs to spearhead this, and we need to put a plan into action, and we all kind of grew up in DIY atmospheres, so we're figuring out how to start a nonprofit and raise funds and build a skate park. For me personally, and for Jeff, the guy that co-founded it with me, really our attention was from the beginning focused on providing physical activity and things to do for people in neighborhoods of poverty. In particular, I grew up in Hilltop and Whittier neighborhoods. A lot of those kids don't have access to some of the same funds and some of the same resources. So providing low barrier to entry sports is a key component for us. And providing, basically, if you compare it to other facilities, if you have a baseball field, you use it for 2 or 3 hours, then the next team comes on, or the next set of teams come on. With the skate park, you really have an all-day experience potentially. So for us, that was a benefit as well. Again, you're talking single parent households, low-income families. So a lot of parents are working and don't necessarily have the resources to, organize things for their kids. So that was kind of our impetus. And then along the process, we met with Paul Tenhaken at one point, and he really saw it from a business standpoint as a workforce development piece. Basically, his idea is all of these things we can bring to our city and show rich cultural fabric in our city really help to recruit people, young people, to this community to work, et cetera. So for me, I personally hadn't even thought of that perspective. I was really focused on the other, but I think that as a broad, just as a broad thought, that adds a really nice component to it, and making it visible and creating, potentially artistic installment there, whether that's sculptural to match with Sculpture Walk or whatever. I mean, those kinds of things, art and skateboarding and creating kind of go together in a lot of places throughout our city, throughout our culture. So that's kind of our motivation. We have been working with Canton Russell of New Line Skate Parks. He actually, there's an architect that now works for Avera, Allison Dvorak, and she met him years ago at a conference on accessibility. He was speaking about accessibility of skate parks, making them accessible to everyone, including wheelchairs, et cetera. And she thought that was really interesting. They hit it off. When we started, she came on board right away and was like, we need to have a conversation with Canton Russell, and so she really facilitated that. And from there, we've grown into talking about a park, and then we brought Canton here two different times from California. Give him a little background on Canton. He was a professional skateboarder for like 13 years and then rolled that over into an architecture career. But in that process, we met with a lot of kids that are using the skate parks now and really facilitated a conversation with them. And Canton really had a nice layout. Basically, he gave us all these papers where we could cut everything out and piece things together that we wanted and build our own skate park, right? And we broke up into 3 different teams, put it all together. And what you're seeing today is a kind of a rough outline of what that might look like as it comes to fruition. So in the blue section down here, basically you've got a plaza viewing area, good for pedestrians, good for parents to watch, good for resting, non-skateboarding activities. The green area for the most part is a street course, which would involve stairs, handrails, ramps, ledges, all kinds of other creative accessories to skateboard. And then the red section would be a bowl section. And the bowl section is kind of what you see a lot of in competition sports, whether that's the Olympics coming up, that kind of thing. They do have a street competition, I believe, in the Olympics, but bowl stuff seems to be kind of where that stuff is heading. As far as the layout goes, we really picked this park for a lot of reasons, one of which is that it has a lot of elevation to work with. So we can tuck the bowls up on that hillside a little bit, keeping it far enough away from the road for safety, but providing us some elevation to build the bowl and still have good drainage to get it out to where it needs to go. And then that just flows into the street course and subsequently, obviously, the plaza down at the bottom. The idea is really to create a sense of community, put it in a visible place where people driving by can see it, see the activity, see how much it's getting used, and I think it's a good spot, in respect to, the communities. I think will have the most immediate impact. Obviously, people on the south end of the city have more means for transportation, et cetera, to get up there if they want to. So, I think that's covered. Yeah, go ahead.
Remind us where there are skate park facilities today in our community.
Yeah.
Remind us where they are.
Oh, remind you where they are. Sorry, I didn't understand. So right now there is one at Nelson Park, and the other one is at Keene Park, which is over by Roosevelt. Yep.
Anything in addition to that is either private or
Downtown ledges and stairs. Yeah, I mean, that's, kids are creative. They're gonna they find ways to do it, but our community doesn't have a lot of those things either. So having a great park that provided a lot of opportunity would be really good. They're both similar size. Keene Park has a lot more ramps in it, whereas Drake Springs or Nelson Park is more flatland with a couple of movable items. So they got some benches or boxes that you can move around a little bit. But both of them are pretty, I don't know. I mean, I would use the term anemic or pretty minimal. Yeah.
No bowls either place, right?
Right, yeah. I mean, it's essentially they're a concrete slab with wood and metal ramps built onto them. Yeah.
Walter, do you have a formal board in place that you, as you get ready to go to the Community Appeal Committee, do you have folks kind of in place that you'd be ready to go and do a campaign?
Yep. We've got a couple of us that are kind of on a fundraising committee. We've got people in place to do marketing. we've got a treasurer, all the stuff you need. We are an established nonprofit, so we're kind of on that page. In fact, Alex Hallbeck is my attorney, and we're adding a couple of extra people to the board coming up in October, which is when our next stuff is due. So, or we've added them already, but they'll be on the official stuff in October. So yeah, we do. It's a real, for somebody who's never done it before, it's a pretty steep learning curve, but it's good for us to do it ourselves. None of us have wealth to hire somebody to do it. So for us, it's like we need to figure it out and work together to do it. And the parks department, Mike has been great, Don's been great, everybody else too, but those two in particular have really helped us like pinpoint places we needed help too. And we have had preliminary conversations with Jason Ball, just to kind of tell him what we're doing, and hopefully we got positive feedback. I think they think it's a good potential match for them. One of the things that came up was their funding of part of the Levitt, and it kind of is a roadmap. Also, the ag experience would be kind of a similar roadmap for us, because basically we're going to turn this over, and then we'd love to have some programming and do some other things, work with the Parks Department, maybe MB on some of that stuff. But that's all future stuff. We need to get square one done first, I guess. I keep looking at you. I don't know why. It's like you're straight ahead.
I guess.
Does anybody have other questions? Yeah, please.
These are just very schematic plans.
Yeah.
But do you plan to incorporate some greenery into?
Yeah, Canton is a big. That's a big factor for him. Is and unfortunately, I don't have them with me today, but we do. He has a lot of examples of large areas of plants, local, plants that are local or natural to the area. So we definitely need that. We need it not only for aesthetics, but we really need it for watershed too. You've got to have somewhere, when you have that much concrete, you have to divert the water somewhere. And so the more of that we can incorporate, the better, for sure, without making it too maintenance heavy. That's really kind of the boundaries that you face.
Okay. I think that'll make it look a lot more interesting and not just a sea of concrete.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And for a lot of us that are on the committee, art is a big driver to this, right? So there are some really creative things happening in skate parks that really add in kind of an abstract art component to it, whether that's the obstacle has like an artistic interpretation. It's not perfectly square and exact. It's like turned a little bit, and there are just different things they can do. So
I think it can look really interesting if you do it the way.
yeah. There's one I think it's in Winnipeg, and it's just, you see the space, and it doesn't look like a skate park. It looks like a big plaza where you'd go and sit and have your lunch, and that really to us is something that, I think would be cool too. To see the people from whatever the state office is there, that's right there, used to be SPS years ago, walking over and having lunch, or even, people from the community just that are out and about sitting down and watching it. Another thing that we've talked a lot about is it being adjacent to the pool, and putting this viewing area in between the two allows parents to kind of, be in between both situations. So if they've got kids swimming and skating at the same time, it gives them something to do and somewhere to go to.
All right, any other questions for Walter or for Mike?
Sorry.
I was just going to recognize Walter and his team for working with Mike and being receptive to suggestions and ideas and open the process, and just really, I've worked in 5 communities and best skate park group I've ever.
Skateboarders can be ornery. They can be.
You're not though.
I'm tempering the you got to be a little ornery, but not too much, right?
Thanks for all your efforts.
Yeah.
Your efforts, definitely. So,
Thank you, guys.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah, if you need anything else, any one of you can reach out to me anytime. These guys have my contact info. So.
All right. Is there a motion to approve the Nelson Park Master Plan?
Second.
Okay. Approved by Jim and seconded by Patty. Roll call vote, please.
Lindquist,
Yes?
Stavinger,
Yes.
Knapfel,
Yes.
Steinborn,
Yes.
Sunday,
Yes.
Abdallah. Yes. Bingaman.
Yes.
All right. Thank you. Good luck to you.
Thank you very
much. I
appreciate all your time.
All right, moving on to the next item of new business, and that is the Rich Guarino sculpture placement. Can you pass those to Ann for signature?
Show and tell today.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, man. So another project that we've been working on for a long time is the Rich Greeno Memorial. Mark came to us everybody. A group came together. You know, their intention is to honor Rich Greeno, the longtime track coach at Lincoln High School. And a similar situation where we explored any and every potential site that makes sense to do this memorial sculpture. We ultimately ended up at the location between Pasley Park and Tut Hill Park. So just as you're going over the pedestrian bridge over the river from Tut Hill into Pasley, there's an open green space, and that's where everybody felt was the ideal location for the placement of this sculpture. And I'll just note, and Mark can probably expand upon it, that it's a special location. It's not just sort of dropped a point on the map. That's where the Lincoln team would typically run to, turn around, and come back. So it's not just a point we picked. It was a point that made sense based on the situation. So right now, today, we're looking for recommendation for approval of the art piece itself. We went to the Visual Arts Commission yesterday. They unanimously approved placement of the piece there. So I brought that up because that's all we're recommending today is approval of the sculpture placement. We're going to have to continue with some more due diligence involving design of the actual plaza itself, as well as a no rise, no impact to the river flooding situation. So we wanted to go through this hurdle first so that the Greeno Memorial guys felt comfortable also casting the piece itself, but then doing the engineering work required to do this. So we will be coming forward in the future with a gifting agreement involved with the construction of the plaza and that becoming a gift of the city. So those will be some of the next steps going forward. And with that, maybe I'll let Mark or Darwin or Zahn talk about the sculpture itself.
Yeah, Mike was talking about the site, and we did look at quite a few sites all over the city, and this site really made sense for us historically and geographically. It's not only for his coaching abilities, but all his volunteerism for the years. He volunteered set up the volunteer meets at Lincoln High School for 40 years, along with the road races. So he really encouraged, health for everybody, no matter the age, no matter your ability, but he got everybody out to do something. What kind of questions do you guys have about the site?
It's not going to be lit, right?
We are probably going to put a couple solar lights that will softly light it at night. Mm-hmm.
Mark, if I remember right, under this most recent historic flood, this was a dry spot. Is that
Correct. We went out and looked at it personally, and that's what the second highest flood we've had, and that since back in the 60s. And so that site was dry compared to some of the other sites we have looked at.
Yeah, and I can just add to that. So, right, it was high and dry in that location, but there is sort of a magical line that's drawn on a map where we determine what's a floodplain, what's a floodway, and all that. So that's some of the ongoing engineering that needs to happen just to verify that we won't be doing any negative impact of flooding going forward.
Any other questions? Okay. All right. Then is there a motion to recommend placement of the Rich Greeno sculpture?
So moved.
Okay.
And Mark, you get to keep this as.
All right. So it was moved by Mike, seconded by Patty? Yes. Okay. And so roll call vote, please.
Lindquist?
Yes?
Stablinger?
Yes.
McEnroe? Yes. Sanborn?
Do I abstain since I have a interest in the
Probably should.
project? Abstain.
Do you have a financial interest in the project?
I donated to the project.
Sundley?
Yes.
Abdallah? Yes. Begeman?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Then we will move on to the report of the director.
Yeah, we been working for a while now with the Dakota Dermatology, and primarily through Dick Freese. He's a doctor here in town, and approached us about providing sunscreen at various locations throughout our park system to try to encourage people to use safe practices while they're out in the sun. And so I hooked him up with Gene Pearson. Gene is our aquatics coordinator, and obviously the logical location was the pools that we have. And she worked with him over the last year or so. And so between Dick and Dakota Dermatology, they agreed to donate sunscreen dispensers at all of our aquatic facilities, and then also at Elmwood and Prairie Green golf courses on the tee boxes before you tee off. So Gene will tell you there are many kids that come to the pools without sunscreen, either because they can't afford it or don't get sent with it. And to be able to have this to reduce the incidence of skin cancer obviously is very important to Dick and Dakota Dermatology. And so what they've essentially done is agreed to donate dispensers. That is kind of like your hand wash kind of dispenser, the antiseptic that you can get. It works the same way, and they're very nice dispensers. The health department's approved everything. And then we would also get some recognition for Dakota Dermatology to be able to do this. And so they have, I believe, all the dispensers out now, and we're working on a news release just to announce their sponsorship of that sunscreen. And I don't know of another city that's doing that. It's a really cool idea, and we just wanted to make you aware of it, but also thank Dakota Dermatology and Dick for their efforts to really pull that together. So you should see a news release out on that shortly. Also wanted to let you know that this year is the 39th year that Sioux Falls has been Tree City USA. And so in the light of all the Emerald Ash Borer stuff going on, next year will be our 40th anniversary of being a Tree City USA. And then I would like to ask if Tor could give us a little update on the playground installations.
Thanks, Don. This year's playground replacement project consisted of 4 sites, McKinnon Park, Morningside, Upper Terrace, and Sertoma Park. Demolition was staggered 1 per week, just to make sure that the contractor could keep up with us. Those began in June, and as of right now, I drove by this afternoon and it looks like we have McKinnon open. The new playground is in and in use. There was at least 20 people on it when I drove by. Morningside's following. We should be done with the rubber surfacing here in the next week, so we hope to open that up probably midweek of next week. Terrace, all the playground equipment is installed, and once they're done with Morningside, they'll jump to Terrace. And then Sertoma is the last one. The one thing I'd mention about Sertoma, we tried a little something new this year, and the rubber surfacing will actually be AstroTurf type. So we're looking forward to seeing how that goes and how that works and holds up to all the work or all the play. So we're excited with that. But that's the update on the playgrounds.
Thanks, Tor.
Thanks.
Kelby, how about an EAB inventory update?
Yeah, thanks, Don. So on the 3rd of June, Davey started with our street tree inventory system, and we got the first, what they call a data dump here just last week. So they've inventoried just over 17,000 trees, which is about a third of our city at this point. And the best part of what they've inventoried to this point is they've inventoried our removal area for 2020. So we'll be able to use this information to select the trees for removal in 2020 instead of driving up and down streets and randomly selecting trees. We'll be able to actually use some of the criteria for that.
So the 17,000, is that public and private land?
It's all street trees.
All street trees?
Yeah, so it's all trees in the public right of way.
Okay, so there's more trees than that, obviously, with private property in addition to that. That's not in that count.
That's right, yep. Now, private trees are not part of it, and park trees are not part of their inventory either. We've already done that inventory. So they expect to be finished by September 2nd. Actually, they expect to be done by Labor Day. So they're making some really good progress. And we launched our new asset management system here just yesterday, and we're in the process of scrubbing the data to make sure that it lines up with our current inventory of the park trees. There's a little bit of difference in how the information was collected. We just got to make sure that it matches up when it all goes into the system and is live for us.
Roughly how many ash trees do we have in the park
We've got just over 5,000 open grown ash trees, but we estimate about another 16,000 in the wooded areas along the rivers and Tut Hill and places like that.
Stump removal, Kelby?
Stump removal is ongoing. We started that just after we stopped removing trees because we can't move trees between Memorial Day and Labor Day. We're about halfway done with the stump removal of the 802 trees that were removed in the first part of the year, which is a good sign because we should be done about Labor Day in time to start removing trees again. And it's good news because we are starting to get some calls from property owners asking when their stump is going to be removed. So we're making pretty good progress there as well.
Good thing.
How many have been found? More?
Well, there was 250 trees identified in the original infestation area on the north side of town, and then we found it in 2 trees that we removed as part of our removal contract, but haven't identified it anywhere else to this point. Brian Peterson and Dr. John Ball have chased down every potential, hey, I think this tree has it. They've gone out and looked and done their due diligence and haven't found it in any other locations.
So it was North Cliff and where? What was
The other one was at essentially 37th and Duluth, just north of Dugan Park. So actually, it was actually on city-owned storm drainage property. So we had marked the trees for removal, and when they came down, the contractor noticed it's something we should take a look at, and was confirmed and sent on to APHIS. But the delimiting survey was done again, and we didn't find it in any of the other trees in the area, so it's either so new it's not detectable yet, or we somehow magically found the 2 trees that it was in.
Sure seems like a big jump from the cluster all the way down to 37.
Yeah, the insect's a good hitchhiker, so if you park your tree underneath an infected tree and the adult lands on your car, you could potentially take it home with you.
Thanks, Kelby. Mike, how about Falls Park viewing platforms and a Buffalo Wall update?
Yep, on the viewing platforms, that project I would say is like 95% complete. All the concrete work is done. All the grading adjacent to the sidewalks and all that is done. The Hull Road has been filled back in and tilled up and ready for sod. All the railing is done along the viewing platforms themselves. The remaining work yet to be completed is the railing section that sort of hugs the river's edge, that kind of follows along until the foam dissipates, and placing sod back. So the completion date for that project is this Friday. I felt very confident about it being done before the rain hit us this morning. So access back on the site's a little tough right now. As long as it dries up, I think we should be completed hopefully by the end of this week. On the Buffalo Wall, the Indian Mound retaining wall down, everybody's aware of that. We bid that project earlier late last week, last Thursday. It came in within budget. We are working with Porter directly as far as removal of the art stone. He's going to remove it and sort it in such a way that it can be reinstalled at a later date. The construction project itself will build a concrete structural wall that is obviously will hold up to the elements and won't spill out onto the street. We're also tying in the drainage behind it into the storm sewer, so that'll add additional help in that area. And then that is to be completed. That'll probably start here later this summer, early fall. We will not be doing any construction work during the tournament itself down there over September 13th. Is that right? There in the early part of September, we have a no work time during the tournament itself, and then we'll look to replace the artwork itself after the wall is complete.
So the original components of the artwork of the original wall will then be
Reused.
part of,
Yep.
reused as part of.
Yeah, the difference before is they served a structural need, right? So they were supposed to be installed in such a way that they would be a structural component, not just art. Now it's going back up just really as a veneer because the structural wall behind it will serve that function.
All right. Thank you for all of that information.
And
Anything else?
just note that we are working on replacement board members for these esteemed colleagues here. Yeah.
Yeah.
John, remind us on where we're at with the strategic plan.
Comp plan? Yeah, well, we had a really good week last week where we had the consultants in town, presented to the city council the results of the needs assessment, and I actually was just meeting the mayor earlier this afternoon and talked about the initial process of the information gathering process and the analysis and the needs assessment, level of service analysis, getting all the information they need to be able to help make recommendations on where we go and what are the strategies going forward. So I believe, third week of August, Tori, that they'll be back in town?
26th through the 28th.
Yeah, so 26th through the 28th, they'll be back in town with some preliminary recommendations on some of the things that they would recommend for us going forward after they analyze all the information. We'll bring that to this board, talk a little bit about that, what you like, what you don't like, are we missing something? And then ultimately in October and then later in November, we'll look to have this board and the city council ultimately approve that comp plan that's required by city ordinance. So it's kind of their job now to get their work done and make recommendations on where they think we should go.
If you want to go back and watch the City Council informational session from last week on Tuesday, Pros Consulting, and then also Councilman Hunsinger, a rep from there. The same rep that actually did our aquatic plan, what was that, 5 years ago? Like he was here, yeah.
5 or 6,
So, yeah. So if you want to go back, you can catch that online. It's, they did a nice job presenting the information. So if you get a chance, it's about maybe 40 minutes, maybe, the presentation was. So I encourage you to do that if you have the opportunity. All right, any other questions for Don? All right, no additional communications have been sent to the board. Any additional open board discussion? If not, I will turn it back over to Don for the years of service recognition.
Yeah, well, we normally have one of these at a board meeting, but we typically don't have two, so it's a special day, I guess. Well, first of all, we'll start with Patty. Obviously, I believe Mayor Munson originally appointed Patty to that.
Whoa.
Yeah, 3 administrations. Yeah, and so Mayor Munson did appoint her, and then when her first term was up, Mayor Huser reappointed her for a second term. Patty was our secretary. She was our vice president and our president, 2 years in each of those stints. So appreciate her leadership on the board. And then I also like to think about Patty's service a little bit in the fact that her kids were kind of that age where they were, her time on the board, they were involved in a lot of different activities, whether it was baseball or whatever it might have been, swimming, whatever. She was always a great sounding board for us. Kind of had an ear to the ground on what was going on out there, really provide valuable feedback on recommendations and suggestions of what we could do to make things better in the park system to serve our community. And so just really appreciate her service to the board. And we got a little plaque here today for her that I'd like to present to her. And I'll just read the plaque to you. It says, City of Sioux Falls Parks and Recreation Board, presented to Patty Abdallah in recognition of your outstanding board service. Date served 2010 to 2018.
Like Don said, when I was kind of reflecting on this morning, and you hit on it, but when my son was 8 years old and my daughter was 5 years old when I was appointed. My 8-year-old son is now graduating from high school, headed off to the University of Nebraska and starting his college career. And my daughter is not far behind. She's all grown up and will be headed off to college in a couple of years. So a lot has changed. I feel like they grew up while I was on park board. And I always did feel that gave me a good perspective because we were using nearly every aspect of the park system, the programs, the partners. And so I thought that gave me a good perspective, and I guess you could say I'm losing my perspective now. So hopefully that's not the case. But besides my family growing and changing, our park system has grown and changed. And I think back to when I started, and we did not have public indoor aquatics. We didn't have a facility for that. That's hard to believe in this climate. We didn't have public indoor tennis. We didn't have a suitable indoor ice arena like we're sitting in now. So all that's changed, and plus we've enhanced and expanded our river greenway system, our bike trail system, our neighborhood parks, just to name a few. We earned a CAPRA accreditation, which is no easy task, as you and your staff will we have a new beautiful state park that wasn't here 10 years ago. And we just opened the Levitt Shell, which we're one of a handful of communities around the country that has one of those, and brings the community together through music, and I just think it's an amazing thing. We'll have that, it'll bring the community together every week for the entire season for many years to come. So those are just a few things that happened while I was on the board, and none of it would have happened without your leadership, Don, and your amazing team. A lot of you are in the room today. But I feel lucky to, well, Sioux Falls is lucky, first of all, and I feel lucky to have served on the board with one of the best parks departments in the country. And so thank you for this, thank you for the opportunity. It's been very rewarding, and I'll miss this and I'll miss all of you.
Thanks, Patty.
All right, you have that to follow now, Mark.
I'll just say ditto.
Well, obviously, Mark was appointed by Mayor Huther. He has served a full term. You know, I certainly appreciate Mark's time on the board too, because one of the things I always noticed about Mark, he would research a lot of stuff. You know, he said, yeah, I know that's what staff is saying, but I'm gonna kind of do my own research to see if they really know what they're talking about. But he did do his due diligence. He had a lot of good ideas. You know, as you guys know, he's an outdoorsman, so he's been a great fit for the board, as we've dealt with those kinds of issues that have come up over the years. And, you know, the other thing you always remember about Mark, and, you know, his nickname is Sparky, right? So that ought to tell you something, but he always added levity to our board meetings and added levity to our committee meetings and all our interactions with him. And, you know, he was just one of those guys that you would always sit around talking after the board meetings, or after a committee meeting about hunting or fishing or whatever it might be, and just an all-around good guy. So we've got a plaque for him as well, so Mark, if you'd come forward. Again, Mark Steinborn, in recognition of your outstanding board service, date served 2014 to 2019.
Reed forgot a couple things.
Well, I didn't want to read the statement. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. It's been a really big honor being on the board. I learned so much being on the board. I just love working with everybody on the board. Everybody has such great input, and they really watch over the city. Don's leadership and his staff are just superb. You know, how you can have great parks year after year after year, really never have a down year. There's always a new project coming along, and all the parks that have been established already are just in prime condition. So it's been great, and we've had a lot of accomplishments over the last 5 years, and Patty's named just about all of those. But so I just like to thank you all.
Yeah, thank you. We've got
I'll just say thank you too on behalf of the board for your service. It's been a pleasure working with both of you, and I know that you will take whatever knowledge and insight you have gained from being on the Parks and Recreation Board, and I know you will take that into the community and whatever your next place of service might be, because I'm sure there will be some place that you will be called upon to serve. So, thank you.
And we've got a little video to recap some of the accomplishments while they're on this board.
Sorry, there's no music, so you'll have to sing to
Really? Oh, that's it. Oh, there you go.
There we go.
So I will